It was just another chilly evening when Sarah, a young McDonald's worker, noticed two kids huddled outside the restaurant's window. Their faces pressed against the glass, their eyes lit up at the sight of leftover burgers being tossed away. Sarah's heart ached. She couldn't bear to see them go hungry, so she quietly packed up the untouched leftovers and handed them over. A small act of kindness, she thought, just doing the right thing. But what Sarah didn't realize was that someone was watching her every move. The next morning, the unexpected happened. Sarah was called into the manager's office, and what followed changed everything. A kind gesture meant to help the less fortunate suddenly spiraled into a storm of accusations and consequences. Little did Sarah know, this wasn't just about her and those kids anymore. Her story was about to make waves far beyond her imagination. Sarah sat across from her manager, her hands trembling as he slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a formal notice. She was being let go. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. "This is against company policy," the manager said coldly. "We can't allow this kind of behavior." Sarah tried to explain, her voice cracking. They were just kids, hungry kids. I couldn't stand by and do nothing. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Word of her dismissal spread quickly among the staff, sparking whispers and debates. Some sympathized with Sarah, seeing her actions as compassionate, while others worried about their own jobs. Meanwhile, the two homeless kids she had helped vanished into the streets, unaware of the trouble they had unintentionally caused. But as Sarah packed her things and left the restaurant for the last time, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Someone knew what had happened, and soon the world would too. As Sarah walked out into the cold night, clutching the small box of her belongings, her mind raced. How had such a small act of kindness turned her world upside down? She replayed the moment over and over, wondering if she could have done anything differently. The kids had been so grateful, their small hands trembling as they took the food. It didn't feel wrong. If anything, it felt human. Unbeknownst to Sarah, someone sitting near the counter that night had filmed the entire scene. The video was now circulating online, gathering views and stirring debate. Comments poured in, some applauding her compassion, others condemning her for breaking rules. The internet was divided, and Sarah's face was suddenly everywhere. At the same time, McDonald's corporate was facing backlash. People demanded to know why someone was fired for helping kids in need. But behind the scenes, Sarah's story was taking another twist. Someone had reached out to her anonymously, claiming to know more about what really happened that night. The anonymous message sat in Sarah's inbox like a ticking clock. "I know what really happened," it read, followed by a phone number. After days of sleepless nights and growing curiosity, Sarah dialed the number. A deep voice answered, "Sarah, you don't know the full story. What you did was right, but it upset the wrong people." The cryptic message left her more confused than ever. Who was this person? And why did they sound so certain there was more to her firing than just breaking a rule? Meanwhile, the video of Sarah's act of kindness was now viral. News outlets picked up the story, and protests began forming outside her old workplace. People held signs reading, "Kindness isn't a crime," and "Justice for Sarah." It seemed like the world was on her side, but the pressure was mounting for McDonald's to respond. Then late one night, Sarah noticed a black car parked outside her apartment. The driver stayed inside, watching. Her heart raced. Was it someone trying to help, or was this all about to get worse? Sarah's pulse quickened as she watched the black car through the thin curtains. Who were they, and why were they watching her? She turned off the lights, hoping to go unnoticed, but her phone buzzed in her hand. Another anonymous message appeared. "You're closer to the truth than you realize. Be careful." The next day, as the protests grew louder, a former coworker contacted her. "Sarah, I overheard something the night you were fired," he whispered nervously. "It wasn't just about the food. Someone high up wanted you gone." Sarah's stomach churned. Why would anyone target her over such a small act? Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah began connecting the dots. She discovered the manager who fired her had suddenly been promoted to a new position. Then she found out that the restaurant had received a visit from corporate the same day she gave the leftovers to the kids. Someone in power had been watching, but why? The black car was back that evening, and this time, a man in a suit stepped out. He knocked on her door, and Sarah froze. The next move was hers, but the stakes had never been higher. Sarah's breath caught as the man knocked again, louder this time. She hesitated, but finally opened the door. "Miss Carter?" he asked, his voice calm yet authoritative. "We need to talk." The man introduced himself as a corporate investigator hired to look into the events surrounding her firing. "There's more going on here than you know," he said, stepping inside. As he explained, Sarah learned the truth. Her act of kindness had inadvertently exposed a much larger issue. The food she had given away wasn't just leftovers. It was part of a secret policy to minimize waste by redistributing unsold food quietly to shelters. But some locations, including hers, had been cutting corners, throwing the food away to avoid extra paperwork. When Sarah acted, it brought attention to the illegal disposal practices, and someone higher up wanted to cover it up. The man revealed that the video had forced corporate's hand. They couldn't ignore the public outcry. "Your story is changing things," he said, "but there are people who don't want this to come out." Just as Sarah began to feel a sense of vindication, he handed her a folder. Inside were photos of the two homeless kids, but they weren't kids at all. They were hired actors, sent to test employees' responses for an undercover audit. Sarah stared at the photos, her mind spinning. Her actions were still genuine, but the situation had been orchestrated from the start. The man stood to leave, pausing at the door. "The truth will come out," he said. "You just have to decide if you want to be part of it." As the door closed, Sarah sat in silence. Her life had changed forever, but one thing was clear. This was only the beginning of a much bigger story. The next morning, Sarah sat by her window, watching the protests unfold below. Signs waved, chants filled the air, and news cameras circled the growing crowd. The folder from the investigator rested on her table, a symbol of everything she'd uncovered. She made her decision. Taking to social media, she shared her story. Every detail, from the kids she tried to help to the truth behind her firing. "I didn't do this for attention," she wrote. "I just wanted to do what felt right. But now I see this is bigger than me." Her post went viral, sparking conversations about waste, corporate responsibility, and the power of small acts of kindness. Months later, Sarah walked past the same McDonald's. A sign in the window announced a new program to distribute leftover food to local shelters. She smiled, knowing her choice had made a difference, even when it cost her everything.